so close sometimes when the religious get introspective and then stop short of recognizing that they're failing as badly or worse as those that they're criticizing. One glaringly obvious example comes from Stand Against Reason's Greg Koukl, who gets about as close as you can get to the truth before he backs off because his religious beliefs aren't based on facts, they're based on feelings. So let's see Greg fail once again as he asks if sincerity matters to God.
I want to talk for just a moment about sincerity because this is something that comes into discussions about Christianity.
Maybe because so many Christians aren't sincere in their beliefs.
And I think it's given more weight in the discussion than it deserves. In other words, people think, well, as long as you're sincere in whatever it is you believe, if there is a God, that's all that really matters to him, okay?
And that's completely wrong. In fact, that's exactly why so many atheists criticize the religious, because as far as they're concerned, so long as they are sincere, or at least profess sincerity, then nothing else matters. The fact that their beliefs are completely irrational, that doesn't matter. The fact that they have no evidence for anything that they believe, that doesn't matter. Just because the believers believe wholeheartedly, that's all they care about. But that's not how this works, okay?
And why wouldn't sincerity matter to God? And my answer is because sincerity matters almost in nothing in life when you think about it.
Very true. How much you believe a thing doesn't change whether or not that thing is true, does it? All the wishes and dreams and hope in the world doesn't make alien abductions real. They don't make Bigfoot real. They don't make the claims of anti-vaxxers accurate. But for all of those, it's all that they have, and that includes the religious who can't produce any objectively verifiable evidence that the God that they believe in is real. Good luck getting around this very easily demonstrable reality.
Anything important, anything critical, anything that has significant consequence in life, sincerity doesn't matter.
Which is what atheists have been telling the religious all along. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what makes you feel good. It only matters what is best justified with objectively verified evidence in the real world. Is Greg finally getting a clue? I wouldn't be holding my breath.
People are sincerely deluded all the time.
Just look at the religious.
Make massive mistakes in life, and they're very sincere, but they're wrong, and there are devastating consequences. And the fact that they were sincere saved them not one whit.
And that gets back to something I've said many times in the past. He's so close to figuring out what he's been doing wrong all this time. But he won't be able to make that last step into rationality, will he? He won't be able to get to where he needs to go to finally escape religious absurdity. But he's right there. If only he'd recognize that he himself is guilty of all the things he's been talking about. But I'm sure there will be no such luck.
I was just reading this morning in John chapter 4.
Yeah, that's not a good sign, is it?
The ones who want to worship God must worship in spirit and in truth.
Yet they don't. Oh, I know religious fanatics like to think they approach their faith rationally. But I have hundreds of videos, including videos of Stand Against Reason, proving otherwise. This is all feelings, no intellect. It's all emotion, no fact. And when they try to use their brains, they inevitably fall into fallacy and wishful thinking based again on feels over reals. You simply cannot get to your religious beliefs using science, reason, or rationality. It just can't be done.
I mean, the issue of God is the most important issue anyone can discuss. There are all kinds of sincere beliefs that take people in all kinds of different directions.
which is why there are more than 42,000 distinct sects of Christianity, but not one of them can prove that this God they worship is real. Not one. Absolutely none of them can produce any objectively demonstrable evidence that shows that their imaginary friend exists. So why should I take any of you seriously? Give me a good reason.
That doesn't mean that disqualifies their conduct, their sin, their rebellion, whatever. It doesn't do that.
Well, it certainly does disqualify their ideas about sin, because sin by definition is transgressing against a deity, which once again, they can't prove is real. So sin is a worthless concept until you can show that there's anything that you can possibly sin against. So sin gets tossed into the rubbish bin.
When it comes to the critical issues of life, just think of medicine, for example. You can have all kinds of sincere beliefs about bad medicine, and you're not going to get better.
You mean like the idea that you don't have to take your kid to the doctor because God will heal them? Because that kills an awful lot of innocent children, and it's based on one particular reading of the Bible. And here's the thing, Greg. You can't prove that your reading of the Bible is any better than theirs.
This is why Paul, in Romans chapter 10, says this of the Jews. He says, I bear them witness that they have a zeal for God.
And we're right back to paying any attention at all to your unjustified and unproven big book of multiple interpretations. See, this is where you're so close, Greg, and then you screw it all up and run back to your emotional beliefs.
But it's not in accordance with knowledge.
You're right. Your religious beliefs are not in accordance with knowledge. So why do you keep believing that idiotic nonsense?
For not knowing about God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own, they did not subject themselves to the righteousness of God, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes.
So close, Greg. So close. But this is exactly what we expect when someone is entirely blinded to their own rationality. Greg knows what he ought to be doing, but he's so deluded by his religious beliefs that he can't see how guilty he is of everything he describes as being wrong. Now, Greg might be a really smart guy, I don't know. But when it comes to his religion, he can't see the forest through the trees.
So Paul says there at the beginning of that chapter that, well, here's a group of people that really are zealous for God, but they're getting it all wrong.
Yes, you are. You're being zealous by definition as an emotional, not an intellectual act. It is a belief, not a fact. It is about feelings, not demonstrable reality. Why are we supposed to take Paul seriously again?
Why? Well, there's complex reasons why, but the important point here is he makes it clear that sincerity doesn't matter.
Your sincerity doesn't matter either, Greg, but shh, we won't talk about that, right?
Now, if you're willing to go along with the idea that no, God is going to be fine with the sincere person, what you're going to have to come up with is a good justification for that, and it cannot be just wishful thinking.
Like your own wishful thinking when you believe in this entirely unjustified and unsupported imaginary man in the sky that you believe in. Because here's the thing, Greg. I don't care what you want to be true. I just don't. I care what you can prove with evidence, objective, demonstrable, verifiable evidence is actually so in the real world. And until you can do that, you're every bit as guilty of irrationality as the people you're talking about. But you won't take that extra step and recognize that you're doing it all wrong as well, will you?
Okay?
Okay!
Find a text. Find a document. Find a place where God himself, in some authoritative way, says all you need to do is be sincere, and it doesn't matter.
All the texts in the world won't prove that God is real. All you can do is exercise blind faith that your text means what you want it to mean without actually proving that God is real or did anything at all.
Where you go, what you believe, how you live, sincerity is the real deal. But you're not going to find that, not in the Bible.
Who cares what the Bible says until you can prove that the Bible is actually the word of some actually existing God? When do you think you're going to get around to doing that?
And I don't think you're going to find that anywhere else that is authoritative for God.
How exactly can anything be authoritative for an imaginary friend? You're missing your first responsibility, proving this thing actually exists.
If you're going to make a claim about what God is really after, sincerity in this case, you better be able to authenticate it in some reliable way.
When do you think you're going to be able to do that? Because that's the thing, Greg. You're so utterly, completely, and totally blind to your own hypocrisy that you're doing absolutely everything that you accuse others of doing, that you're a prime example of how to deconvert the religious. Because damn, you are out of your rational mind when it comes to religion. But by all means, keep it up.
Because everything rides on this.
On being able to think intellectually and critically and with knowledge and evidence of forethought? Yes, it does. Except when it comes to your religion. Then you throw it all out the window.
Sincerity is not the right factor for the God of truth. Only truth is the factor.
Let us know when you can show that you've been in the same zip code as truth, won't you, Greg? Because from where I'm sitting, you're just making a complete fool of yourself. You can keep that up too.
You must worship God in spirit and in truth. That's what Jesus said.
You mean Jesus, who you can also not prove ever existed. I mean, he started out great and then he took a rational left turn at Albuquerque because he's entirely blind to his own failings as an intellectual human being. But that's because when it comes to religion, he isn't. No believers are. They can be the most intellectual, educated, well-read, and well-studied people on the planet, but when it comes to their religious beliefs, all of those things get turned off. They don't matter when you believe on emotional grounds. And people like Greg here can get so close to identifying what they're doing wrong, except they can't see their own failings at any time. They're like the alcoholic who says they don't have a problem. Of course they do, but they're blinded to it because it makes them feel good, and they don't know how to look in the introspective mirror. So once again, as expected, Greg Koukl fails to see the irrational plank in his own eye. He's fine pointing out the speck in others, but for himself, he's a miserable failure. But what else is new, right?